Chapter 295 to 299. The attacker who dared to attempt Sandaime Hokage's assassination and escaped from the Hokage building was extremely swift. After just a few ups and downs, he has already left the Hokage building far behind, leaving the central area of the village. The trailing Umbu members did not give up their pursuit because of this. The Umbu shinobi would never show mercy on someone who would dare to assassinate the Hokage. As such, they spared no effort to increase their speed and closely followed the attacker. Humph! Idiots! The attacker snorted coldly after looking at the trail behind him, and deep killing intent appeared in his heart. Deciding so, the attacker turned around the corner and stopped at the center of the intersection. Currently, the streets were very noisy, and the villagers were leading their families to take refuge. No one knew what the exact reason was for announcing an emergency so suddenly, so the people were a bit panicked and there was restlessness around. The attacker quietly stood waiting for the Umbu shinobi to arrive. He did not care about the presence of evacuating villagers. Whoosh! 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 At this time, the Umbu members that followed him suddenly started to appear, their figures scattered around on the road, on the sidewalls, on top of the roofs of different houses, effectively forming a siege circle surrounding the attacker in the center. The collective appearance of so many Umbu immediately alerted the evacuating villagers, and they understood that something was wrong here. Many of the villagers are family members of shinobi and have also been shinobi themselves at some part of their lives. As such, they understood that fighting is very likely to break out here, and at once fled without hindering Umbu shinobi. Now, only the attacker and the Umbu members were left in the immediate vicinity. The attacker swept his gaze over the sieging circle, and he chuckled, ha ha ha. Only 12 of you have caught up? The Umbu shinobi looked at each other after hearing the attacker's contemptuous words. 12 Umbu means 4 Umbu teams, and considering that they are dealing with only one enemy here means that this number is already quite high. While the Umbu shinobi were looking at each other, the attacker also looked at them. According to Zetsu, intelligence on his own identity and abilities must not be revealed in this operation, therefore, the attacker was acting covertly. But now that he is surrounded by a few teams of Umbu shinobi, there is only one thing he can do to make sure that no intelligence of his identity and abilities are revealed. Once all of them are killed, no one would find any intelligence. And without further ado, he raised his arms and started printing the hand seals. The surrounding Umbu would obviously not sit back and wait for death. When the attacker started printing hand seals, they also started their offensive to eliminate the attacker. Earth release, Earth bind. Fire release, Flame bullet. Wind release, Great breakthrough. Instantly, the Umbu used a combination technique, the Earth-style Jutsu bound Hiriko, while the Fire style and Wind style combined together, resulting in much enhanced compound ninjutsu that was shaped like a large fire dragon, and it came towards the attacker as if it would eat him alive and burn him into dust. However, the attacker did not even try to dodge or counter these subsequent offensive attacks. All he did was just simply stretch out his hand. Whyish! With a sizzling sound, the combined ninjutsu that had an extraordinarily great momentum simply disappeared. It was mysteriously sucked inside the palm of the attacker. At the same time, the Earth-style jutsu that has risen a few moments ago on the ground also collapsed. He was able to absorb our ninjutsu. Is it possible that he is using dark release? But he is an Uchiha, and Uchihas do not have dark release. Then maybe he has Manjikyu Sharingan, as they grant a user some tricky abilities. It is possible, but I would say that's not the case here. Look at his eyes, they are still at a simple 3-tomo state. The attacker chuckled at the confused state of the Umbu shinobi, and without waiting for them to recover from their shock, he suddenly disappeared from his position at an unreal fast speed. Whoosh! And the next thing you know, he was standing behind one of the Umbu shinobi. Just how? This Umbu only felt was something coming out of his chest, and looking down, he noticed a black arm sticking out from his chest and carried his still beating heart in its grip. Cough. Spurt. Plop. Fell on the ground and died. Everyone was shocked, but that did not stop them from launching the next set of offensive, as the 2 nearest Umbu members nearest to kill the attacker. One of the Umbu brandished a special sword, while the other one had a kunai in each hand. Seeing 2 Umbu members rushing toward him, he shook his head lightly. He did not bother to dodge. And at the moment when the sword's blade and the kunai were supposed to kill him in a pincer attack, the attacker just raised his hand to block both the weapons. Both Umbu members frowned upon such a reaction. Because this was not an instinctive response from the attacker, it was a controlled action, and they felt that blacking blades with hand was unreasonable unless and until someone is completely confident in his ability to do so. And their doubts soon became a reality as the moment both blades touched the attacker, a loud sound of metal clacking echoed. Immediately afterward, cracks started to appear on the sword and the kunai. Before either of them could react to such an incomprehensible change, both of their chests were also pierced by the attacker and their beating hearts were gouged out and crushed by him. Losing their hearts, both of them coughed out blood and fell on the ground, as blood kept flowing out of their hollow chests. By now, the other Umbu shinobi were already covered in cold sweats. His body is. No doubt about it, that one is steel release. Close combat is useless against him. Ninjutsu also seems to be ineffective against him. Taking advantage of speed also doesn't seem to be an option. He also has Sharingan, it is unlikely that Genjutsu would work against him. The captain of one of the team stated, "Do not panic, use Fuinjutsu to trap him and limit his movements." With just a few words of the captain of one of the team, all the Umbu ninja regained their confidence and redeployed their tactics. However, the attacker did not give them enough time to execute their tactics, as he flashed from one position to another. Every time his figure disappears, one of the Umbu members would lose his or her life, and within just a few short moments 6 more Umbu members fell to the ground in the pool of their own blood with their crushed heart lying next to them. We are no match for him, retreat, at least the intelligence on his abilities must be passed back. With on 3 members of the 12 remaining, one of the Umbu members issued the order for retreat, and immediately following the order, the 3 Umbu separated and started running away in 3 different directions. The purpose was obviously to increase the possibility of survival of at least one of them. "Ha ha ha, you want to run away? Do you think you can?" With a loud laugh, the attacker stretched out his palm in the direction of the shinobi who issued the order, "Dark Release, Judgment." And immediately light blue flame sprouted out of the attacker's hand, burning the shinobi into dust. The very next moment, his figure flash disappeared and appeared next to the second shinobi. "Tell me, do you think that you can?" And immediately he again stretched out his hand, "Dark Release, inhaling Ma." Followed by his action, the running Umbu shinobi's chakra was absorbed into the diamond symbol. "My chakra. Urea, LLY have, dark really, ASE kek, Kegu, NK, AID, O, NT. Y, O, O. Was all he spoke before falling to the ground like a dried up raisin, and soon lost his breath. But the attacker did not hear this Umbu shinobi's dying words, as he has already flash disappeared and rushed towards the last one. While chasing after the Umbu shinobi, he again stretched out his hand. But this time, neither were there any blue flame nor was any chakra absorbed. But long white bandages extended out of his hands and rushed towards the Umbu at a speed faster than that of sound. The bandages soon closed the distance between the two, and entangled the Umbu's hands, legs, and neck, making him not be able to go any further. With the Umbu shinobi captured, the attacker grinned, he also controlled the bandages and dragged the Umbu shinobi backward. Now, the Umbu shinobi was already lying on the ground, and while keeping his one foot on top of the head of the Umbu shinobi, the attacker said, "You are weak, and so you know what is the sin of a weak." Although the Umbu shinobi was very much alive, he did not care about the words of the attacker, nor did he respond to the attacker. The attacker chuckled, and then put force in his leg to crush that head like some watermelon. Kacha. The entire scene was like a gore painting, and the attacker appreciated his art by nodding to himself. After having painted Konoha, he did not stay in this place anymore and disappeared. Sometime later, he appeared within the forest region outside the village. With the attackers, a green bud sprouted out of the ground and soon revealed its figure. This person was none other than Zetsu. Looking at the attacker, Zetsu asked, "Hirako, did you complete your part of the mission successfully?" The attacker who attacked Sandaime Hokage, Mitokado Hamura, as well as killed many of the Umbu ninjas was none other than Hirako, who has gained 5 distinct and powerful Kekkai Genkai, and has already mastered their combined use at a primary level. Not looking at Zetsu, yes, as asked, a shinobi with Sharingan, with his body structure similar to Uchiha Shursui and speed as fast as Uchiha Shursui of the body flicker attempted to assassinate Sandaime Hokage, although failed, he did manage to injure one of the elder advisors. Hirako said as he removed the mask and tore off the black disguise that he wore. Zetsu nodded and curiously watched Hirako. At this time, Hirako's muscles and skeletal structure squirmed and transformed back into his own skeletal structure. Zetsu said with an impressed look, this technique of yours that alters body structure is better than simple transformation techniques." Hirako smiled in glee. Chimera technique grants him various passive abilities other than the 5 Kekii Genkai he absorbed, and being able to alter his body structure is one of those abilities. After changing back to his original body structure, Hirako looked around his surroundings and asked, curiously, "Where is Shino? Shouldn't he be here waiting for me?" "In the village." Plop. With a muffled sound, a Hyuga Chunin was knocked and hit the wall severely. Shino dusted off his hands and went further. Currently, he was no longer the old Shino. After having used the body revival technique in combination with the dark chakra from Morio to increase his strength, Shino underwent a great physical change. His hair and beard have grown wild and much longer, as well as blackening under his eyes. His eyebrows became thicker, and his muscles greatly expanded. All this made him look much younger and more physically fit. Even the creases under his eyes and the dark bags around them also seemed to have disappeared. Overall, it wouldn't be wrong to say that he is now terrifyingly strong. Glancing at the Hyuga ninja who has lost his breath in just one punch, Shino clenched his fist, feeling the strength his body contained. He smiled in ecstasy. This is the perfect body. Shino felt the changes within his body and felt that his current body contained endless power. Even just a casual punch can exert a terrifying level of power to the extent that it can kill a Hyuga Chunin with little ease. Such a thing was completely unimaginable in the past. Moreover, the amount of chakra he had access to also felt endless, like an endless sea, and Shino can't help but marvel at this. So this what it feels to be like to be a Jinchuriki. At this time, another Hyuga Chunin, who was responsible for the evacuation of the villagers, found out Shino and asked vigilantly, "Just what are you do in G-H-E-R?" The Hyuga Chunin did not get to finish his words, as a punch in the chest stopped his words midway. His eyes bulged, body arched backward, the sound of ribs cracking was clearly heard, and saliva and blood were coughed out by him. And the next moment he collapsed on the ground. He tried to speak, but no sound came out. Shino smiled and then proceeded forward, completely ignoring the 2 dead Hyuga ninjas. With the previous punch, Shino has damaged the heart and lungs of the Hyuga Chunin, a result causing internal bleeding and lack of air in his lungs. Even he did not receive emergency medical treatment within 10 seconds, then he would die without any question. Walking forward, Shino focused on the exact location from where he felt the power of Miko resonating with Morio sealed inside him. Finding it, Shino slowly walked forward and soon arrived near the house of Hyuga Kuroto. Looking forwards, Shino saw that a kunoichi, a little girl, and a normal human carrying bow and arrow were running somewhere, possibly towards the emergency shelter that the other shinobi were also going towards. Shino chuckled, and immediately exerted strength in his leg, and jumped forward, crushing the floor below his feet, and took a high leap into the air. And traveling at fast speed, he soon covered up the distance between them and landed in front of the 3 while crushing the road below his feet with an exploding sound. Boom. The sudden appearance of this person immediately alerted Hyuga Yui, Cheyenne, and Teruho. Yui immediately stood before Cheyenne and Teruho, with her Byakugan activated, took her battle stance, and asked vigilantly, "Who are you?" Although Cheyenne has never personally seen Shino, because of her intuition and disposition as a Miko, she felt resonance with the Morio sealed within Shino and also had an innate resistance, fear, and disgust towards Shino. Teruho drew out his bow and arrow and guarded the shivering Cheyenne. Shino did not look at the Hyuga Kunoichi, his gaze was directed towards the young girl shivering at the back, and he smiled contemptuously. Similar to how Miko can sense Morio, so can Morio sense Miko, and Shino, being the current Jinchuriki of Morio, he can obviously sense what Morio can sense. So, with just a glance he knew that the little girl shivering at the back of these 2 soon-to-be dead people is his target, even if he has never seen the little girl before. After confirming his target, Shino transferred his gaze towards the young kunoichi who protected the little Miko and observed her eyes and battle stance. Maybe it was because he felt that he held the situation in the palm of his hand, so Shino was in a good mood, and felt like playing a bit. "Oh, another Hyuga, a kunoichi at that. Say, now that I think about it, I want to ask you something. Do you know of someone with the name Hyuga Kuroto? He should be about the same age as you, I suppose. Is he after Kuroto-kun?" Yui's gaze immediately changed, from a vigilant look to a fierce one, and she immediately spoke with a gloomy and murderous tone. "What do you want with him?" Shino didn't seem to notice the Hyuga Kunoichi's dark tone, or maybe even if he noticed, he didn't seem to care, and chuckled. "Want something from him?" No, you misunderstand me. I am not interested in some lowly Hyuga of the branch division, who is nothing more than a slave to his rotten clan. The reason I am asking about him is that I worked with him a few years ago. It was part of a mission that he took a few years ago, along with Uchiha Itachi, but anyway it doesn't really matter, I am here for Miko's daughter. Speaking so, Shino took a step forward, the mere thought of swallowing the power of Miko and become an existence beyond the level of Bijou, reaching the realm of Super Kage level made Shino extremely excited. Teruho immediately drew an arrow, and warned, "Stop, don't take a single step forward." But Shino completely ignored Teruho's warning. Will Shino even be deterred by mere bow and arrow? Shaking his head with a chuckle, Shino did not even glance at Teruho and took another step forward. Teruho did not speak anything but directly shot the arrow. Shino still did not bother to look towards the coming arrow, and merely tilted his head to dodge and said, "Don't put unnecessary resistance, it will only make things difficult for you, accept your destiny." Yui has already observed Shino's state. She can see extremely dark and evil chakra surging like a volcano within Shino. She has never seen something like that, or maybe she has, the Kyuubi, but that was only from a distance, but now was different. Was she scared? Well yeah, anyone would be. But she has no intention of running. Why? Firstly, this person is after Cheyenne, the little girl is under Kuroto-kun's protection, and since Kuroto-kun has gone to the land of demons to check the state of Cheyenne's mother, so Yui must protect Cheyenne, this is her responsibility as Kuroto-kun's significant other. And secondly, this person dared to mention Kuroto-kun, which means that he will also target Kuroto-kun if left alone, and how can she let such a thing happen? She knows that Kuroto-kun is strong and won't be defeated so easily, but this does not mean that she will simply walk away knowing that this person will sooner or later go after the person she loves more than anything in the world. Yui did not look back and said to Teruho, "Teruho-san, take Cheyenne-chan and leave, I'll hold him." Shino raised his eyebrow and laughed, "You think you can stop me?" And immediately his figure flashed and approached Yui. His speed was extremely fast and his fist was already positioned to directly kill the Hyuga Kunoichi with just one punch. 8 trigrams vacuum palm. However, his fist did not connect with the Hyuga Kunoichi, as a high-pressured air thrust suddenly stopped him midway and then blew him with a tremendous force before he even realized that he was hit. Blown away by this sudden attack, Shino severely crashed to the sidewall, causing it to immediately collapse. Body revival technique. As the dust settled, Shino got up and dusted himself, as his muscles wiggled, bulged, and strengthened. To be honest, he was somewhat surprised. He did not think that any random kunoichi would be able to do so. But he wasn't really worried, it only made this hunt a bit more interesting. After getting up and dusting himself, Shino again rushed towards the young Hyuga kunoichi. Yui did not move from her position. As the enemy came closer to her, suddenly 2 metal chakrams slid down from the sleeves of her kimono and were held by her in both of her hands. The moment Shino's fist was again about to hit her, she leaned her head back and bent her back backward. Her body formed a D shape, and using both her hands, she lifted both her legs, kicked Shino on the lower chin with her left leg, then using the same momentum she did a flip and threw both chakram towards Shino, one after another. Shino, who was sent backward with the kick in the chin, immediately noticed 2 chakrams that were spinning at a very high speed coming towards him, and he immediately drew out kunai to deflect the 2 spinning chakram. While he tried to deflect the 2 chakram, the trajectory of both the chakram changed, as a thin metal wire was connected to both of them and it allowed Yui to control their trajectories. So, both the kunai were cut, and along with it, both of his arms were also cut. Body revival technique. With this, the battle should have come to an end, but actually, it did not. Shino did not seem to care about his severed arms, and rushed towards Yui. While he rushed towards her, the tissues around his severed arm wiggled and suddenly started to expand, and started growing, and instantly they had already regenerated. Yui was shocked seeing such a scene, regenerating severed arms? However shocked Yui may have been, this did not affect her reactions as a taijutsu battle broke out between Shino and Yui. Each of Yui's attacks caused internal damage to Shino, but for some reason, all of them continued to be healed. It seemed as if Shino was not suffering any injury. And as the battle progressed, Yui's advantage started to fall, and Shino started to gain the upper hand. Revival Fist. Shino gathered dark chakra into both his hands and unleashed a powerful shockwave towards Yui. Yui was horrified and she had no confidence to be able to dodge this pressured shockwave that would cause tremendous internal damage. Yui One-chan. Cheyenne, who was not far away, exclaimed, but it didn't seem that her scream would have much effect. As Shino's fists approached Yui, suddenly a shadow leaped down the street at an extremely fast speed, grabbed Yui, who was not able to move much, and disappeared. Boom. and the dark chakra that exploded from Shino's fist caused a loud explosion. As the dust settled, the view became clear. Shino frowned because he didn't see the collapsed figure of the Hyuga Kunoichi. At this time, a female voice reached Shino's ears. "Hey you, what is your name?" "Hyuga." "Hyuga Yui," answered Yui, who was held in the arms of this Kunoichi. "So, Yui-san, do you think you will be able to stand?" asked the Kunoichi. Yui immediately nodded. "Yes. Yes, I am able to stand." The Kunoichi nodded and helped Yui stand on her feet. Then she turned to the teenager with bow and arrow in his hand, and asked, "What is your name, kid?" "Teruho," answered the boy. Yui nodded and said, "Can I trust you to escort the little girl and this injured Kunoichi here, to the evacuation center?" asked the Kunoichi, who was dressed in black Kunoichi vest with an Uchiha clan crest in the back. But what about him?" questioned Teruho. "Don't worry about him, he won't be hindering you," answered the Kunoichi. Teruho thought for a moment and nodded, "All right." The Kunoichi nodded, "Good, now when I signal the three of you to go, then go." "You." Shino frowned when he saw the Kunoichi, as she was none other than Uchiha Tsukihai. Hearing Shino's shout, Uchiha Tsukihai turned and looked at him with a murderous gaze. If Uchiha Tsukihai, or Kuroto, arrived here even a moment late, then Yui would have been seriously injured by Shino, and thinking so Tsukihai's heart was almost raised to her throat. Shino didn't seem to care about Tsukihai's gaze and asked with an irritated expression, "Why are you obstructing me, Uchiha Tsukihai?" Tsukihai did not answer, but leaped forward slightly, and said to Teruho, "Cheyenne, and Yui, now go, leave him to me." Hyuga Yui looked up and down at Uchiha Tsukihai. Her intuition is telling her that this Uchiha Kunoichi is quite familiar, but even after trying to remember as to who she is, Yui was sure that she has never seen her or heard the name, not personally, not from someone else. As such, Yui asked with a frown, "Who are you?" Uchiha Tsukihai's gaze did not shift from Shino, as she replied to Yui, "It does not matter who I am, what matters is that the three of you have to get out of here before this place becomes a battlefield. Remember the task that you were entrusted with and focus on that objective, leave him to me." "Yui, I will be going to the land of demons, please try to protect Cheyenne in my absence," was what Kuroto-kun asked her to do. From her battle with the enemy, Yui has come to realize that this person uses some unknown jutsu which allows him to regenerate all his injuries, again and again, therefore, it would be hard for her to kill him so easily. And this Kunoichi seems to know Shino and is confident to hold him back to secure a retreat for them, so there is a possibility that she has some way to deal with his regenerative abilities, so it's best that she deals with him. Thinking so, Yui did not hesitate any longer, and led Cheyenne and Teruho away from here. Shino did not blindly chase after the three, but asked, "I am going to ask this once again, why are you obstructing me, Uchiha Tsukihai?" Tsukihai said, casually, "Because I feel like it. But you can think of this as a payback for sending Oto Yumi after me." Shino frowned, and he didn't really have an answer here, because even if he says that Oto Yumi came after her on her own accord, it wouldn't be believable as Oto Yumi was introduced as his subordinate. Since he did not have any answer here, Shino said coldly, "I understand, but I will say this: if you have even slight attachment to your life, then you would better step aside, because I will not spare your life just because you are Uchiha Shinichi's subordinate." Uchiha Tsukihai giggled, and did exactly the opposite of what Shino asked her to do. Instead of stepping aside, she blocked Shino, started walking forward, as well as held the katana at her waist. Seeing that Uchiha Tsukihai does not have any intention to follow his words, and the fact that this bitch completely ignored his warnings, Shino shouted in rage, "How dare you look down on me? Damn Uchiha bitch, so proud of your bloodline? I will show you today what real power is." With that, Shino let out a loud scream. Instantly, dense blackish-violet chakra vapor, visible to the naked eye, burst out of his body. Under the influence of these chakra vapors, the already bulging muscles of Shino further wiggled, bulged, and strengthened. "Ha ha ha ha," with a frantic laugh, Shino shouted, "Do you see this? This is real power, real strength. You Uchiha should be ashamed of yourselves, always relying on the power of Kekkei Genkai." Tsukihai's expression shrank. At this time, the chakra reaction on Shino's body was extremely strong and dark, giving off a feeling that she stood in the presence of a full-fledged Bijou class being. Damn, fighting him without Ryumyaku will be extremely tough, not to mention that I can't openly reveal my eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. This battle will be extremely tough. I have to play this out with wit instead of pure brawn, thought Tsukihai. Suddenly, Tsukihai said, "Is that the best you can do?" "Well, I am not surprised. Shinichi-sama did say that you are the second weakest in the organization, just after Zetsu, who specializes in collecting intelligence, isn't that right? Shino chuckled, and just as he was about to answer, something unexpected happened. Whoosh, pierce. Suddenly there was a sound of something breaking past the speed of sound, which reached Shino's ears, and then the next thing he understood was that something pierced his chest from the back. Shocked at this sudden change, Shino looked at his back and found an Uchiha Tsukihai standing at his back, with her Sharingan activated. Shino was confused. He looked at his front only to see that nothing stood in front of him. Shino was stunned for a moment and reacted, Jinjutsu. Uchiha Tsukihai giggled in a mocking tone. Sure enough, just as Shinichi-sama said, you are pathetic, aren't you? With the success of the sneak attack, Tsukihai was about to weave the hand signs to launch a fire-style jutsu, but upon noticing that the dark chakra coming off from Shino had suddenly intensified, and his muscles have again started to wiggle, Tsukihai immediately stopped and withdrew backward. Drip. 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 As the katana was suddenly pulled out of Shino's chest, some blood sprouted out of the wound, as well as from Shino's mouth, and dripped on the ground. But it soon started to heal. However, Shino was angered, and covering the still healing wound, Shino spoke with a gloomy tone, how dare you? He didn't expect that he would be affected by a Jinjutsu even with Morio sealed inside him. Tsukihai did not care about Shino's gloomy tone. She just casually waved her katana to get rid of the blood on it, and without saying a word, she was analyzing Shino's changes, especially how his injury was being healed rapidly. This attack was just a preemptive one, as Tsukihai needed to understand the degree of Shino's regeneration. It must not be forgotten that the secret technique of physical regeneration that was passed on to Kuroto by Orochimaru was obtained from Shino, so Shino must know how to use that technique perfectly. There is also a possibility that Shino is also using the Chimera technique, and coupled with the fact that he has also swallowed Morio, so it is understandable killing him won't be an easy task. And as expected, within just short few seconds, the stabbed wound on Shino's chest completely disappeared, but the muscles on his body were still squirming. Tsukihai squinted, immediately turned around, and ran away in the opposite direction to Yui, Chien, and Teruho. Want to escape? Shino's eyes were already red by now, and his expression was full of anger. The stab wound a moment ago did not cause any substantial damage to his body, but the fact that his damn Uchiha bitch has repeatedly annoyed him angered Shino, especially when he was immersed in the feeling of infinite power. And seeing that this damn bitch now wants to run away, how can Shino allow such a thing to happen? Smash. Boom. Break. Crack. The angered Shino completely disregarded the houses and walls, and like an uncontrolled bull, rushed straight towards Uchiha Tsukihai. Everything that came in his path was demolished, causing loud sounds to reach even the far end of the village. Uchiha Tsukihai, who was running in the front, glanced back, and for a while she was stunned by Shino's physical strength. Being able to demolish houses so easily is not a joke, you know. But what made Tsukihai more surprised was Shino's stupid behavior. It's true that demolishing houses so easily is not a joke, but it's not that big of a deal either. But the fact that Shino is doing so is pure foolishness, because doing so will only attract the attention of others here, which is obviously not conducive to his objective. Is his mentality somehow affected by Morio? A momentary thought appeared in Tsukihai's mind. Because this is indeed a possibility. Tsukihai can be sure that the dark and evil chakra of Morio is significantly higher than the mere Reibi that Shino used in the canon, and Morio is pure evil, and it is impossible that there would be no complications of swallowing Morio. At least, ordinary people should not be able to resist the spiritual erosion caused by Morio, and considering the foolish behavior of Shino, it is very likely that his mind is being passively affected by Morio. But looking at all the houses collapsed by Shino, Tsukihai noticed one common thing: each house was empty, which means that all the residents have evacuated somewhere. Tsukihai can't figure out the exact reason for Sandaime to issue such an order. This is because such an order of emergency evacuation is not issued unless the village is in existential crisis, and Tsukihai can't figure out what exactly happened that prompted Sandaime to issue such an order. It couldn't be that some other shinobi village launched a surprise attack, because there are no noises of fighting anywhere. What exactly happened in the village in my absence? Muttered Tsukihai. After some thinking, Tsukihai thought of one possibility: is it somehow related to Uchiha clan launching a coup d'état? Considering Shino's daring infiltration within the village, there is also a possibility that Akatsuki planned all this and put all the blame on the Uchiha clan. On the side of Team 11. As Kakashi, who was still in his dog Umbu gear, waited for the response, the Umbu who wore the eagle mask said, it most likely is a trap. I am not 100% sure, as there is something hindering with my perception, Captain. Dog frowned, most likely? Cat quickly said in a low whisper, "Captain, let me rescue him. If it is me, then even if it is a trap it won't be effective on me." Dog glanced at the young kunoichi, who was wearing the eagle mask, and had purple hair, then turned to Cat, and nodded, "Alright, but be careful." With the captain's nod, Cat's figure disappeared and instantly appeared on the grass about 4 or 5 meters away from the tree on which Uzumaki Naruto was tied up. When Uzumaki Naruto saw the sudden arrival of this ninja who wore a strange cat mask, he tried to struggle more and tried to speak many things, but for some reason, no coherent sound came. Cat activated his Manjikyu Sharingan and observed his surroundings. No traps were present nearby, but that simply doesn't make sense. With a doubtful look, Cat turned towards Naruto and still saw that there were no traps. At this time, Cat was a bit confused, but regardless, he cautiously walked towards the tied-up Uzumaki Naruto, and just when he tried to cut the rope through which Uzumaki Naruto was tied, he suddenly heard the sound of exploding tag burning. Hiss. Suddenly hearing the sound of exploding tag being lit, Cat did not care about his own safety, hurriedly cut the rope, removed Uzumaki Naruto's jacket, threw it upwards, and immediately shielded Naruto. Boom. 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 In an instant, a series of violent explosions engulfed the area where Cat and Uzumaki Naruto were present. Dog was shocked and worried. The 3 tomo in his Sharingan were spinning, and he rushed forward, trying to check out Cat and Uzumaki Naruto's situation. At this time, a spiraling whirl appeared behind the eagle-masked kunoichi, and a hand stretched out from the spiraling whirl. 1 solved, 3 more to go. The moment that hand was about to touch the should of eagle-masked monkey-masked Umbu suddenly came out of nowhere, caught her, and flashed away. Chirp. And the very next instant, the sharp sound chirping of thousands of birds was resounded in the forest, and with dangerously dazzling thunder wrapped around his hand, the dog-masked Umbu, who had turned back a few moments ago, quickly rushed towards the masked man. "If it isn't the long-lost Chidori," whispered masked man to no one in particular while looking at the lightning wrapped around the right arm of dog-masked Umbu. Dog-masked Umbu didn't seem to notice the masked man's fluctuating emotions. His speed was extremely fast, and in just an instant, he had already arrived in front of the masked man, but the fact that the masked man did not even attempt to dodge, retreat or block the attack made him feel confused. Whoosh. Dog's eyes shrank. The attack that was supposed to kill, or at least injure the masked man, did not even touch him. In fact, it just phased right through him, as if what was standing before them was nothing more than a projection. "What sort of ninjutsu is that?" muttered Dog in confusion. But before he could reanalyze things, he suddenly felt a harsh kick on his waist, and with just one blow, Dog was blown away and severely crashed on the nearby tree. The masked man muttered in anger and disappointment, "Pathetic, useless as always, can't stop anything, can't save anyone." At this time, the dust on the opposite side cleared, and Cat Umbu, who had a dark green skeletal structure covering him, was revealed. His back was covered in small burns, but nothing too dangerous. He also saw the weird scene where Captain's attack phased right through the body of the masked man, and to be honest, he even with his Manjikyu Sharingan was unable to figure out the exact mechanism. He was certain that it wasn't due to some sort of genjutsu or mere image projection. The masked man is indeed standing there, but the attack still phased right through him. This was strange. He understood that they have encountered a powerful enemy with strange abilities, so he did not dare to be careless, and said to the panicked Uzumaki Naruto, who was held by him, "I and my teammates will deal with him, meanwhile you will run in the direction of the village, can you do that?" Cat knew that the reinforcements from the village will be on their way, so as long as Uzumaki Naruto runs in the direction of the village, he will soon meet up with them, and thus will be escorted back to the village safely. Although Naruto is a kid, and he was unaware that this masked shinobi was secretly protecting and watching him for months now, but he saw the scene where this masked shinobi did not hesitate to risk his life in order to save him just a few moments ago, he was still touched. And with the calm and gentle tone he spoke to Naruto, Naruto instinctively nodded. For some reason, Naruto felt that this person was different from the rest of the villagers. He was like Hyuga Kuroto, yeah, like Hyuga Kuroto, and Ramen guy. So out of trust, Naruto nodded, and as soon as the cat-masked shinobi put him down, he ran away. It's just that the ignorant kid did not know the right direction at all, and although he ran extremely fast, he did not run in the right direction. Cat looked helpless, but at this time it was already too late to stop the kid, so Cat could only sigh and look at the captain. Dog nodded towards the cat, then glanced at Eagle, "Go after the kid, and make sure that he reaches the village safely." The eagle-masked Umbu hesitated a little, but looking at the resolute eyes of 3 of her seniors, she nodded and disappeared in the direction Naruto went. The masked man did not stop her, he just lazily stood in the center of the 3 Umbu. With Naruto and Eagle gone, Kat asked with a sharp tone, "Just who are you, and what do you want with that kid? I don't believe you are from Amatsukami." The masked man did not even bother to look at Kat, or any of the other 2 members of Team 11, from beginning to end, his gaze was on Uzumaki Naruto and the Eagle Umbu that went after Naruto. To be honest, the Jinchuriki kid wasn't really his target, bringing Naruto here was just part of his plan, and letting him escape was also part of his plan, so he did not have any intention of stopping Naruto from beginning to end. At this moment, sudden noise was heard, and from the looks of it, a large number of shinobi were on their way here. The masked man chuckled loudly, "It's about time," and immediately activated some strange technique. As soon as the technique was activated, his figure distorted and disappeared in a spiraling whirl. The second part of his plan has just begun. Confronting Uchiha Shisui and Hitaki Kakashi wasn't really necessary, as such the masked man tacitly disappeared, because his objective was achieved. "Damn, it's a space-time jutsu again," muttered Kat with a frown. No matter how much either of 3 thinks about it, there doesn't seem to be a way to counter this technique. Whoosh! 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 Accompanied by the sound of breaking past wind, several figures, led by Elder Danzo, arrived at the battlefield. Shimura Danzo looked at the state of the battlefield, and with just a glance he figured out some things, then he turned towards the captain of Umbu Team 11, and questioned, "Where is the attacker? Where is the Jinchuriki?" Dog pointed in the direction Uzumaki Naruto ran in, and said, "The attacker just escaped using some sort of space-time jutsu," and Uzumaki Naruto ran in that direction. "Eagle of our team went after Uzumaki Naruto, and we were going to go after him as well." "Stop!" Shimura Danzo ordered and stopped the 3 of Team 11 to chase after Uzumaki Naruto. His gaze was flickering as if he was preparing for something. Kat asked doubtfully, "Danzo-sama, is something wrong?" The dog looked at Shimura Danzo deeply and then signaled something to Monkey. Unlike Kat, who was really worried about the safety of Uzumaki Naruto, the keen captain of Team 11 noticed the strangeness of Shimura Danzo's expression. At this moment, the captain of the Hokage guards along with the rest of the Hokage guards also arrived, came next to Dog, and whispered lightly, "Someone tried to assassinate Hokage-sama. We suspect that the culprit of the attack is Uchiha Shisui." The dog was shocked and immediately denied, "It's impossible, Uchiha Shisui has been under my watch from beginning to end, it cannot be him." The fact that Hitaki Kakashi denied it made Shimura Danzo's determination stronger. He instantly used the body flicker technique and instantly rushed towards Uchiha Shisui without any warning or questioning. With his crutch pointing towards Shisui. Uchiha Shisui did not expect Elder Danzo to attack him so suddenly, for seemingly no reason, and that too at such a critical moment when the life of Kyuubi's Jinchuriki was at stake. As a result, he was highly shocked. But even if shocked, Shisui still managed to directly use Genjutsu to subdue Shimura Danzo instantly. Instantly, Shimura Danzo, who had rushed towards Shisui, came to a halt, his head bent down, and it seemed he has lost consciousness. With Shisui's Genjutsu mastery, he managed to instantly subdue Shimura Danzo even with hastily launched Genjutsu. And just as Shisui wanted to figure out why Elder Danzo suddenly attacked him, the figure of Danzo standing in front of him suddenly disappeared, and this disappearance was so strange that neither was there any smoke nor any signs of other techniques being used. It was as if Shimura Danzo wasn't even present there. Shisui's eyes widened. "This is Iza," was all he could speak when Shimura Danzo suddenly appeared behind him out of nowhere and fiercely struck his crutch on Shisui's spinal cord. Shisui wasn't able to avoid this attack. He had barely managed to avoid being hit at the spinal cord, but he was still in severe pain, and weakly asked, why?" Shimura Danzo said coldly, "Humph, you Uchiha Shisui, dare to collude with the Uchiha clan and plan the assassination of Hokage-sama, and you dare to question me why?" While Shisui lost his consciousness, Danzo did not wait any longer, and hurriedly stretched out his hand to rip out that oh-so-powerful pair of Manjikyu Sharingan from Shisui's eye sockets, so that he can finally have the ultimate Genjutsu technique Koto Amatsukami in his hands and make good use of it for the sake of the village. Just as Danzo's fingers touched Shisui's eye sockets, some sort of seal hindered Danzo to move forward and rip out those eyes. And before he could figure out what in the hell was this, 2 figures simultaneously appeared before Danzo, one of whom heavily kicked Shimura Danzo in the chest, while the other picked up the unconscious Uchiha Shisui. Both of them acted in tacit cooperation, and in the blink of an eye, they rushed out of the crowd while carrying the unconscious Shisui. Shimura Danzo, who was kicked heavily in the chest, collided with a tree, but it didn't seem that he was injured. However, he was deeply angered, and that rage was clearly visible on his face. Looking at the two figures who disappeared with soon-to-be his pair of Manjikyu Sharingan, Shimura Danzo gritted his teeth in frustration. Hatake Kakashi. Might Guy. He was only a step away from Manjikyu Sharingan, and the fact that these two interfered with his plans angered him. In rage, he immediately ordered the shinobi around him. Umbu Team 11 colluded with the Uchiha clan, and betrayed the village by participating in the assassination attempt of Hokage-sama. For their crime, I, Shimura Danzo, declare them to be rebels. Immediately start hunting. The loyal shinobi of the root subunit did not hesitate to chase after the three Umbu of Team 11, while the shinobi that were not part of the root subunit looked at their respective captains. They were not sure what to do. Team 11 is undoubtedly the most elite and strongest team of the current Umbu department, and their respect is extremely high within the Umbu department. As such, they were hesitant to act as per Shimura Danzo's orders. The captain of Hokage guards stepped forward and said, "Danzo-sama, Uchiha Shursui is only one of the suspects. He is not proven to be a convict as of yet. Moreover, Hokage-sama ordered that Uchiha Shursui must be brought back without any injuries, so directly declaring them as a rebel is a buy." Shimura Danzo interrupted his words midway, and said sternly, "I will explain things to Hokage-sama myself. Now Uchiha Shursui is an extremely dangerous person and he is on the loose. Moreover, I suspect that the rest of Team 11 is under his control, so they must be immediately neutralized, and Uchiha Shursui must be eliminated as early as possible, otherwise the danger he poses to the village is too much." Speaking so, Danzo did not care about the opposite party's words and immediately rushed in the direction of Hatake Kakashi and Might Guy. Seeing Shimura Danzo's reaction, the Hokage guards, as well as other Umbu shinobi, looked at each other helplessly. They were not sure what to do. The captain of the Hokage guard pondered for a moment and said, "Hokage-sama tasked us with bringing Uchiha Shursui back safely, and we have to also see that the Jinchuriki is safe, so from here we are going to be divided into 3 teams. One will go after Team 11 to ensure their safety, one will go in the direction pointed by captain of Team 11 where Uzumaki Naruto went, while the last will go back and inform Hokage-sama. Is that clear?" "Yes." Everyone responded. The captain nodded, and immediately divided the teams to follow the orders.
If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/Kaioshin. I tend to polls that decide important plot stuff in my Patreon. Many thanks to my awesome patrons. Nicholas Berenger, Ben Phillips, Yamatancho, Taco TSK, Yuki, Jose Torres. If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. I'll be here until next time.